Welcome to Arithmetic Zone and welcome to the final part of our basic JavaScript tutorial. After this, we're going to go back to website development and use our knowledge of JavaScript and combine it with the HTML and CSS portions. So today we're going to go over functions. So if you see right here, I have a whole bunch of console.log statements and I have all these asterisk symbols as strings that I'm planning to print out on my console. So I already have my git bash open. I already have it on the CS folder. So I'm going to say node introduction.js to see it in action. Alright, prints this out because that's what I specified in the console.log with the quotation marks. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it's this cool shape. But you can already see that some parts of this code are redundant. Like I use this little string of stars 3 times. So what I could do to simplify it is, use a for loop. Then I could put this inside right here. And then I can copy this and then put it down here. And it should function the exact same. So we simplified the code a bit. Alright, but notice how I have to call the same for loop twice. I mean, if I try to make this longer, like let's say I copy these portions, like I have to use that same for loop 3 times. So there has to be another way. There has to be another way to reduce this redundancy. And there is a way. We have functions. So I'm going to create a function outside of this block of code. We're going to say function, then give it an appropriate name. So what do I want to repeat? I want the line of stars to repeat. So let's just say line of stars, then add parentheses, then brackets, and then I can move one of these for loops inside. So now every time I want to call that for loop, I would call this function line of stars. Make sure you have the parentheses. You always have the parentheses. So I'm going to substitute it all for that. Now let's try running our code. And it performs the exact same as it did before. So one really cool thing about functions is you can repeat lines of code by defining a function using the function keyword and then calling that function by using the name and then the parentheses. But why do we have the parentheses anyway? We had the parentheses for parameters. So I'm gonna delete all this and we're gonna make a new function. It's called function introduce, and it's gonna be 3 console.log statements. Hello, my name, let's just say Joe, and I am 17 years old. So if I call the introduce function, it should work as intended. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter the order in which you define it and then call the function. It could be either or. So everything works, but what if I want to customize this function now? What if I want to pass a value for the name so that I can print out a statement depending on what name I give it? So let's say I want to, instead of printing out my name is Joe, let's say my name is Adam. Well, this is where parameters come in. Instead of having to make a whole new function with that whole new name, instead what you can do is add a local variable, we're going to call it name, inside of this parentheses right here. And where we want to reference name in our print statement, we're going to separate the string, so like right here. And then we're going to write comma, name, comma. So it should print out, hello, my name is whatever name it is, and I am 17 years old. Finally, when we call our function, we need to pass a value to this name parameter. So to start off, let's just use Joe so we know that it works how it did before. And we're going to run the code. hello, my name is Joe, and I'm 17 years old. Looks like because I use commas, I shouldn't have a space here. So I had an extra space in my code. Now it should work as intended. Oh, right here as well. Alright. Always gotta debug your code. Hello, my name is Joe, and I'm 17 years old. So same as the first attempt. But now let's replace the name with a different one, Adam. Save, it should print out 2 introductions. But the second one, hello, my name is Adam, and I am 17 years old. So perfect, that works as intended. And it's not like we can only have one parameter, we can have more than one. You can want to change this age, simply add another parameter. So name age, and then comma age, comma. And now we gotta add an additional parameter when we call it. So 17, let's say 20. Make sure the order corresponds to the order in the method header right here. So I have name first, then age. If you swap them, then they're going to be swapped here when they're used. So be careful about that. But let's see it in action. So hello, my name is Joe, and I'm 17 years old. Hello, my name is Adam, and I'm 20 years old. So, of course, the reason why the numbers are highlighted is because I didn't put them in string form. I put them in the number data type, and this is GitBash's way of telling me that's a different data type. But it functions for the most part the exact same. So that's a basic overview of functions and parameters. So now I went ahead and made this cool string algorithm, something I wished to cover earlier, but I didn't have enough time. So essentially this is a string transversal, and a string transversal algorithm is any algorithm that like repeats through the letters of a string. So I have a string called it hello, and I'm using a for loop, and I'm accessing each individual letter of the string with I. Because the cool things about strings in JavaScript is that strings are considered arrays of letters. So I can, and remember arrays, we use the brackets and then a number to specify each individual value in the array. So if I use a letter right here, so let's say I is 0, str bracket 0 is H, str bracket 1 is E, and so on. So I can, using the length property, I can use any string and I can print out each individual letter on each line with this algorithm. So hello, as you can see, prints out each letter and each line, and it's not like the length matters or what it is because I use str.length, so it's going to work accordingly. If I use good morning, it'll print out each letter individually, including the space, because that counts as a character. Now I want to turn this into a function so that I don't have to keep changing the value of string right here. So let's call it function transverse, and then we need a parameter, an str parameter, so that we can print out whatever string we want. Then we're going to move this here, for loop here, so for let I is equal to 0, I is less than str.length. And then str refers to this parameter now. So now we got to call the function with the strings we want. So now if we test this code, we should first see hello, print each individual letter, and then good morning, print out each individual letter. And then you see right here, hello, and then good morning right below. So we can customize the function of our code with any string we want using functions. I have another cool algorithm for you. This one takes a string and then it makes an empty string, and what it does is it transverses through the original string, but it starts from the last letter, so str.length, and then it continues all the way to the first letter, and then when it does that, it appends the current letter into new string. So essentially all it does is it makes new string the reverse of the original string. So let's test it out. It prints out ole, the hello backwards. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to show you the next step in making functions. So let's first turn this into a function. We're going to call it the same thing, transverse. Or actually, let's call it reverse. It's more relevant. And then I'm just going to take this. I want to move new str here. And then I don't really need that anymore. What I am going to need, though, is a call to that function. So hello. And you might notice that we didn't actually put a console.log because I wanted to show you something you can do, and that is a return statement. So what does a return statement do when it's inside a function? A return basically gives you back a value wherever you call it. So if you return a value within a function, then you can actually store this call into a variable, or you could even just print it out. So let's just say let return statement, this is a variable, equals that, and then we can console.log the return statement. We got to see it in action first, of course, but it should function identically. There you go. And then of course I don't even need this. I could just console.log the whole function directly. But again, this is something you can't do unless you have a return statement. So let's test that out. Print it out twice because first time I just because I console.log it twice, and I had two different calls to the function, technically the same, two separate calls with the same parameter. But why would you ever want to return a value instead of just printing it directly in the function? It's so we could use that value later. So I'm gonna get rid of this. So I just returned the value of new string, the reverse string, within return statement. What I can do now is use that return value elsewhere in my code. So let's say for whatever reason I want to know return statement.length. It's going to be the same as the original length, but let's just say I wanted that. It should print out 5. And see, it prints out the length of the new string. So it's useful if I ever want to use that return value elsewhere in the code. Another useful thing about return statements is that when the compiler sees that return statement, it automatically ends that function. So we have good uses for this. I went ahead and made another algorithm. This time I'm making an algorithm where I check a list of items and then check for an individual letter. And then this returns, if it's in the list, it's going to return the index in which it appears, and if it doesn't, it's going to return false. So I have an example, an array of A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm checking to see if A is within this list. So let's run the code. I did use the return statement, so I have to make sure to print out that call to the function. And it prints out 0 because A appears at index 0. So let's put in more examples. Let's put in if C appears or if E appears. And we see that C appears at index 2 and E appears at index 4. But what about F? F is not in this list, so what is it gonna print out? Oh, I spelled it wrong. Whoops. Prints out false. Why? Because it went through the whole array, checked each letter with the letter parameter, checked each letter in the array and compared it to the letter parameter. And if they matched once, it returned I and the whole code just ends. But because it never matched, it never satisfied this if condition, so it ends the for loop and then goes to this return false statement. Hence, it returns false. So that'll do it for functions, and that'll do it for basic JavaScript. Next time we do coding, we're going to get back to website development. See you then.